We are being treated by the good spirits in our lesions in the spiritual body, okay, and also in our integral health. And it's a workplace as well, because we have the opportunity to be useful to one another. The good spirits prepare the environment very carefully before we come here. They have a hospital connected to our center. And that's why we have the lavender flowers, because around the spiritual hospital there are lavender gardens. So it's as beautiful as you can imagine. And many discarnate spirits are being treated there. And when we go to sleep, if we have merit, we are brought to their clinics to be treated as well during the night. It's up to us to step forward to those treatments as well. So we're saying this because during this time that we're sharing instructions, they are already operating on us. And we, our team, prepares ourselves during the week for the works. I particularly come here at least once a day to check on the physical status of the center and to say a prayer and to help with an inspirational message every day. The behind the scenes of the Spiritist Center physically is very intense, because things don't stay in their place like this. So we're sharing this because it's an honor for us to be here, for all of us. There is a scholar in Brazil, thank you, Daisy, named Herculano Pires. He used to say, if Spiritists knew the treasure they have in a Spiritist center, we will have many more on the earth. It's not easy to keep one open. It's even harder to open one. I have many friends who tell me, I wish we had one here. Go ahead, do it. And it's free. I mean, no, you don't need to go to school to open a Spiritist center. Believe it or not. But it's not that simple. And to keep one open, it's more complicated, because it takes a lot of faith, a lot of work, and a lot of resilience. Because many times we encounter obstacles where we least expect. The forces of evil do not want works of the good on earth. Whether it is a Spiritist center, or a church, a good school, the forces of the good are being challenged, and they have been challenged on earth. So we are all invited to work on our own benefit and the benefit of the community by cherishing this sacred opportunity that we have here, and respecting with the utmost reverence the works that are being sustained by Jesus Christ in our center. Because there is no Spiritist center on earth that is not being supervised and guided by Jesus. Because no work of the good comes from ourselves. Feeling that presence tonight, we're being asked to evaluate how we can better stay emotionally stable. Because in the current times on earth, it's clear that we're living rocky times. It's like this stop and go movement. Like, oh, everything's going well, and then suddenly it stops. What's happening on earth? Right? So there is one message by Joana de Angelis, not only from her, but that we are going to dissect, as if we are dissecting a human body, to evaluate for our emotional regulation. For many centuries, many people believed that our emotions are things that are in the air somewhere out there. And the important part is our reasoning. Scientists have already proved that to be really rational, we need to work on our emotions. It's what we call emotional intelligence. Nobody goes to school for that. So, majority of people on earth are emotionally illiterate. Don't know the ABCs of emotion. If you ask people, what are you feeling now? They're like, me? Yeah, I'm okay. What is okay? Okay means what? Give me a name. ABCs of emotion. Okay. No, okay is not an emotion. You see? It's as if we were talking to a caveman saying, bring your kids to school. And the caveman is going to turn to us and say, what school? I mean, school for what? I don't need school. School to write and read. Write and read what? I don't need no writing, no reading. I need to hunt for food. No, but if your children learn how to write and read, your family is going to be able to build a house. But I have a house, it's my cave. And then we're bothering so much the caveman that he kills us. Because that story of school is too much of a bother. That was then talking about the education that we have nowadays. And that mentality, unfortunately, still exists on earth. If you go to certain countries around the world, we're going to have parents saying, my children don't need to go to school. One of my grandmothers was prohibited from going to school because she was a woman. She was prohibited. Only boys could go to school. Girls had to stay home and help around. And it's not like a million years ago. When we talk about emotion, many people feel the same way, like the cavemen. I don't need any emotional education. I'm doing well. I am who I am. I don't need to do any works. And if you tell them about psychotherapy, they think I'm not a crazy person. I don't need to see any psychologist. This is how illiterate emotionally we are. But Spiritism addresses it and says from A to Z that if we do not feel the Christ conscious proposal, we will not be able to build the kingdom of God on earth. Nicodemus, a man who was one of the few scholars at his time in his area, approached Jesus and said, I've been reading all the scriptures. I know about it. I know there is the promise of this kingdom of God. But you're the Messiah. Tell me, what am I missing? And Jesus replied, Nicodemus, it's not enough to know. You forgot to feel it. To feel what? The Christ-conscious proposal. But majority of us live our daily lives from the waist down. It's about eating, having sex, pleasure, that's it. To feel is a little above. And to feel the Christ conscious proposal, we need what in neuroscience we say, the modulation by our cortical areas. Think about this. Daniel Siegel, one of the leaders in the neuroscience of emotion, explains to us in a beautiful gesture. Our brains are like this. Okay, this is the nose over here. This is the cortex. This is our spinal cord over here. Inside, over here, we have our limbic system. In the middle of our brain, the processing of our most primitive emotions go on here, but only when I process them using the most evolved part of our brains, the cortex, is when we're going to manage these primitive emotions. Animals do the same, but their prefrontal cortex is pretty much inexistent. If you see the brain of a rat, it doesn't have those circumvolutions that we see in our brain. They feel anger, they feel pleasure, they feel fear, but they cannot reason it because we need more evolved areas. And the brain is an organ that needs to be stimulated. So if I wake up, go to work, eat, drink, go to work, come back, have sex, sleep, my life is not too far from an animal life, because I'm not doing anything else that is more cortical related. But Spiritism is the light of discernment, and we can only understand it if we use our cortical areas. That's why many people on earth are not there yet. Because it's too much of a thinking process. Even people who are mediums and non-spiritist mediums, they're like, I just want to feel it. They don't want to study. They don't want to reason the phenomena or do what Kardec used to do, and he says in the medium's book, observe the facts, analyze the language. Majority of mediums simply feel the phenomena and let it flow. They don't observe, they don't analyze. Fail. Chico Xavier observed, analyzed, productive medium. Nobody tops the framework given by Spiritism. And we are not saying this to incite our pride, but to trigger our responsibility. To trigger our responsibility and work at the core of ourselves, immortally speaking. I am not born to create a family, have children, send them to Harvard, and then die happy that everybody is doing well. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to purify myself, the spirits say. But it's a funny word, because when you ask purify, it means we're dirty, right? No. When we go to the root of the word purification, it means selflessness. To be pure is to really be in this cosmic awareness and know that every action I take, every feeling, every word, every thought affects everybody. So, Emmanuel, knowing of this, wrote the book Thought and Life. And he says in the first chapter that our life is the mirror image of our inner construction. So whatever happens in my life, I have a choice to feel like a child, because usually children are like this. It's not my responsibility. They did it. They did it. They did it. But when I grow up and I mature, I say, oh, actually, I did it. So Emmanuel teaches us that at the core of ourselves as spirits, we feel, and our feelings lead us to ideas. Ideas will lead us to the formation of our character and our attitude in life in general. So we need to see what we're feeling. That's why Joana de Angelis brings to us the proposal of emotional stability, a way for us to regulate these emotions with an immortal feeling. It's in this book written by Joana de Angelis to Divaldo Franco in 1987, Emotional Stability. It's very interesting. It's almost like a thesis on it, because it brings to us deep awareness that we, emotions, are not like their private episodes, as Descartes used to say, or like Darwin revealed. It's so deeply inside of us that they are used to adapt ourselves to the circumstances that we're living in. Meaning, we needed to work with our emotions. And neuroscience comes and says it's so deep inside of you that you process in your brain. So it's impossible to feel anger and say, I'm going to go to work and then forget about it. It doesn't happen this way. I may not pay attention to it, but it's still there. And it may act out when we least expect. Then I'm driving to work, accident. And psychosomatics say accidents usually are byproducts of anger. Oh, but what about the discarnate spirits? Well, they join in the party of feelings. So they maximize, they use magnifiers, and boom, explosion. Of course, we're never alone. But we need to understand that there is more than the eyes can see, and it begins inside of us. So if we could tell each and every person on earth, the secret of life is inside of us. It's not in our relationships, it's inside of us. Relationships are already a byproduct of what we cultivate inside of us. Some people come and say, there are spirits harassing me, like obsession, spirit attachment. But they will not be able to do it if we don't give them open doors to do it. If we're loving and kind, really charitable, Christian, and humble, etc., they cannot dance inside of our lives. But many people go to churches, temples, even spiritist centers. They spend the whole week lying at work, deceiving people at work, at home, cheating, betraying, and then they come and pray, please God, help me and my family be happy. God is not sarcastic, so God's not gonna laugh. But we could laugh, because the math doesn't add. We want 4, but then we don't do 2 plus 2. The equation is not providing the result that we expect. If we do not have integrity, there is no happiness. If we don't work on our moral principles, we won't be happy. There's no miracle. So Joanna de Angelis talks about wellness. What's wellness? It's emotional stability and conscientiousness, which is very interesting. Opposite of what we would call neuroticism, when we are constantly worried, constantly thinking negative about everything, like many people nowadays. They wake up like feeling negative, neuroticized. Though the day is not going to go well, this is not going to work. They are not experiencing wellness. We are not. To have that emotional stability that Jesus proposes to us, I wake up trusting, like a tree. The tree is not neurotic. That's why Jesus says, observe the birds that fly in the sky. They're not neurotic. Oh my gosh, it's snowing again. We thought it was spring, and then it's snowing. What's up? What's happening? And then we go crazy. No. They're still trusting. The squirrels we observe, they trust. When snow comes, they disappear. Then sun is shining, they reappear like, oh, they're so cool. They are not worried about it. I don't know. They survived. The penguins, the polar bears. People are like, oh my gosh, there are no polar bears anymore because of global warming. We've never heard polar bears being neurotic about it. Should we be attentive to the health of the planet? Yes. We're talking about something that goes beyond being attentive. It's about being neurotic, about constantly worrying about things. It's the opposite of wellness, something we have not conquered yet. We're yet to get there. Just so we have more ideas, I saw this study about personality change influences mortality in older men. It's not about men and women, it's just a study. But what is interesting is neuroticism is linked to increased mortality. So it's good not to engage in that personality trait too much and help our children since an early age. I'm not gonna make it. Yes, you will. I'm sure you will. If your friends can, you can do too. Everybody can, because you're a child of God the same. Teach them to love exams and not be neurotic about it, negatively thinking. Parents teach their children to be neurotic. Right, teacher Vijani? Right? Oh my gosh, exam! And then the children are like, should I be worried about it? Yes, you should! Why? Because you need to pass and have good grades. And they're like, really? And then, when they are in their teen years, they are like this and like, cool down. But you taught me to be that worried about it. Right? But we can teach them to enjoy it and say, whoa, another challenge, yay. It's real. We can teach them and say, yay, it's a test. We're going to put it all out there. Great. You know, we're not competing with anyone. We're just putting out what we have already learned. Easy. We can enjoy. Is it possible? It is possible. People laugh when I say this, but I say, practice makes perfect. You can train yourself to get there. If you think of Michael Phelps, the great Olympian, he's not perfect. We're not talking about personal life. We're talking about his professional life. He chose to spend his life discipline, like swimming 8 hours a day, For you, if you had to swim 8 hours a day, it would be torture, right?
Yeah.
For him, it was like he's in heaven. It doesn't mean his muscles were not sore. Doesn't mean that there were days he didn't want to do those many hours, but he insisted and persisted and he trained himself and he succeeded without being neurotic about it. If you see the interviews of the people, the athletes, for example, they enjoy the process. They don't go to the gym like, oh, it's torture for you to do. Right? They're like, oh my gosh, it's so great. And they love what they do. And that's a good way to combat neuroticism. There are details in this study, but we won't waste time with the details on the study. We'll go straight to Joanna de Angela's message. When she says to us that emotional stability is attained through inner conviction. That's precisely what we're talking about. How can an Olympian, an athlete, achieve that result? There is stability, there is consistency, there is persistency, but there is inner conviction. I can do it. Do you believe you can be emotionally stable? You don't need to answer, but think about it. Do we visualize ourselves already at a point, maybe not now, but that we can achieve it? Because if we cannot visualize it, it's not going to happen. It begins in inner conviction. But how does it begin? We don't think it's possible without the foundational certainty that God exists. Who am I? How can I be sure about myself if I don't feel that God is the sustainer of my life? Pretty hard. So we would say self-esteem derives from our certainty that God loves us and sustains us unconditionally. We want our children to be good in their self-esteem, but they will only find it if they feel God first. You become invulnerable in the sense of you're a child of God the same as everybody else. There is nobody that is more loved by God. We're equally loved. Because God is just. God is not neurotic. Thank God. God is stable. When people say we're part of God, we don't think so. Because we come from God, but we are not part of God, like some traditions say. Because God is immutable and we're still changing. God doesn't change. That's why my inner conviction is possible. Because God sustains us and I can achieve that emotional stability that I see in Jesus. We've never heard of Jesus being worried about anything. He was focused. He was kind and determined. He was courageous, loving. When we look at our model, we say, that's how I will become. But do you feel it? Because if I go to the gym, I look at the teacher and the teacher says, 10 jumping jacks, I can only do 1. Are you crazy? 10? I'm joking, of course. Let's say 100. 100 jumping jacks right now! We're like, 100, I cannot do it today. Again tomorrow. The other day, okay, maybe at the end of the week I did 100. But the teacher is proposing something that is possible to do. Jesus is our teacher. If he says it's possible for us to do what he did and much more, he was not kidding. But that's our goal every day. My goal is not to be good on earth. Is to be on earth, but with the immortal goal. And for that, I need to sacrifice many things. Emmanuel, in the book that we studied at 11 p.m. and finished this week on Wednesday, he said, education is a consequence of discipline. Discipline is a consequence of sacrifice. And sacrifice is not easy for anyone, he says. So we cannot. And then Kardec says in the Spirit's book that education is the acquisition of new habits. So to acquire new habits and to achieve emotional stability, I need to discipline myself. And discipline means sacrificing what? First, the negative thinking. I need to sacrifice that negative thinking. Pause for a second. You may be in a job, if you're a teacher, a healthcare provider. You constantly have meetings with your group. And you talk about problems. Is that negative thinking? No. Like a vet needs to talk with a group about the problems of the health of the animals. Is that negative thinking? No. If you work on customer care, you need to talk about the issues that the customers talked about with your group and say how we can prevent those issues from happening again. Is that negative thinking? No. Jesus often had to remind his disciples of the problems that would come up, to the point that many of them didn't believe him. People are gonna torture me and gonna do this and that, and they were like, what? You're healing people, you're helping people. They couldn't understand. That's not negative thinking. It's being mature and adult, realistic. But then I trust that I'll be able to work with that scenario and have a good outcome. That's what we're talking about, the very difference. A physician sees the patient, knows about the disease, etc., but has faith that with treatment, etc., we can achieve healing. Negative thinking is when we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we paint everything dark. Nothing goes well. People don't understand me. They don't accept me. Everywhere I go, problems happen. That we need to sacrifice and say, I no longer go there. We need a lot of discipline to educate ourselves not to be in negative thinking, to believe that the good is all there is. Emotional stability comes with that inner conviction that God is at the center of our universe. So, I don't know how, but from where we are to a better state of mind and or health on earth, God's going to provide the elements for us to get there. only when I put God at the center. That's why in the Spirit's book by Kardec, question number 1, what is God? Without that conviction, emotional stability is impossible. Joana de Angelis adds, that conviction is our faith in the ideals we profess. In the ideals. In the ideals. Ideal is different than idea. It's different. Idea is a thought form. Ideal is a goal, a sublime goal that we have. Question for us. Do we have ideals, what we call millennial goals in life? Do we strive to achieve them every day? Or are we just like everybody else? Shallow thinking. My goal is just to go through the day, go home and relax. Or enjoy life. We won't educate ourselves and acquire new habits as programmed in a reincarnation. I need to discipline myself and to sacrifice things to educate myself, to evolve, to achieve that emotional stability. And sometimes it's about forgiving ourselves and others to really achieve emotional stability. Emotional stability depends on that certainty that we are essentially good because we come from God and we're sustained by God for a wonderful purpose that we are yet to understand, but we feel it. Joana de Angelis adds that emotional stability overcomes the fear generated by past errors, in previous lives included. It's going to help us. Now it's the effect of being emotionally stable. When we are emotionally stable, we are able to deal with emotions with ease. I observe that I'm feeling unsettled. I go home and then I say, okay, I see. I'm feeling afraid. What do? I can pray, retreat to compose myself, do a visualization, open a good page, and say, no, it's okay. I don't need to feel that way. But let's talk a little bit about fear. So primal. Even animals feel it because it's defense mechanism. People don't like to feel afraid. But fear is defense mechanism. It's like something is threatening us and we feel like we need to defend, so we are like retreated. But then when we are at human level, we can reason it and say, let us look at it closely and see if there is any need. And most often we're going to find that many scenarios that trigger fear are repetitions or replications of scenarios in our childhood. And we haven't resolved. When we were stimulated to be afraid, to be respectful. Many parents do this. And in in previous generations, it was a technique to control children. Fear. And then as adults, it comes unconsciously. We project the scenarios in front of us, and it feels the same way. We need to deal with it. That's why many people need alcohol to numb themselves, because it's too much of an emotion. So just for the fact that none of us have a perfect childhood or have had, we need to go there and organize those emotions in a better way to live better. Because our parents are just so human. They did the best they could, but it's not exactly the healthiest. And now we're still feeling the effects of that education that sometimes reinforced fears. Fear of not being loved. It's our worst fear. We have siblings, and then there's one that we observe is more liked by our parents than us. And then we rush the anxiety to be accepted, to be loved the same. But it's on us to go there and conquer it. We're not even talking about previous lives. Just in this life, there is enough content for us to address. And sometimes parents, unfortunately, they push the buttons of fear, saying, your brother's much better than you. Look, your sister, your brother. Or you overhear the parents talking about it, or you observe the behaviors. And then the fear of not being loved or accepted, the fear of being abandoned. So when we put God as our main source, as adults we can do this. We start conquering those fears because we know that God didn't place us in that family without a reason. The reason is overcome your fears. You as an adult, we can go back and re-edit the emotion. To re-edit the emotions in our childhood, it's as if, you know, nowadays we have even apps that you can edit movies, right? And it's so interesting because you can cut a scene, you can insert a sound, or you can insert a scene, etc. Emotionally, that's what we can do. We can go back to the scenarios that were traumatic and observe from different angles. Because in any good movie, there are many cameras. When we're children, we're recording our emotions from the angle of our feelings. But as adults, I can reassess the same scenario and look at the camera from my parents' side. So we need to discover why the parents used to do that way. And from the spirit guides or the obsessors. So there are so many cameras showing us angles we've never seen before. And we can reassess those emotions, say, hey, the reality is that it's not that you are not loved, but that father or that mother had so many obsessors. They were imprisoned. They couldn't express their love for you. Oh, so I was not lacking any love? No. Look at the camera. You were loved. But what they lived in their childhood prohibited them from actually showing that love to you. It's like, for example, when I say, A girl wants to go to school and the father says, no, only boys go. It's not that he doesn't love, but his cultural belief limits his action and cannot provide to you that. For him, he's doing his best for you. He was not a bad father. We're not going to say that in other scenarios it wouldn't be a bad father, bad mother, bad educator. But we're just saying we can always give ourselves another angle and even see, as André Louis shows, in those books, he shows to us the other cameras that we didn't have access. When Claudio is harassing his daughter, we understand why. Of course he's not right. But we understand why. He's not alone. Plus, in a previous life, they were lovers. That doesn't mean in this life he should go to that direction. No. But we understand why he feels magnetically attracted to that direction. I know it's a hard topic to talk about, but it's in need of being addressed. Emotional stability allows us to pursue our superior ideals and be of service to others. It neutralizes environmental instability. That's quite interesting, because if we gain emotional stability, we can be generators of environmental stability. And it doesn't need more than a person to do it. It's very empowering. And we can only understand if we think of chemistry, when we think of ourselves as vibrating beings that are vibrating that stability. And then, you know, like music, you can calibrate an instrument just by the vibration of it. You can calibrate it. We see this in laboratory. Molecules that stimulate cascades of events just by being who they are, what they are. Plus, emotional stability helps us face pressure. So during the transition of the earth, if we invest on emotional stability, we'll be better off and everyone connected to us. Because while everybody's like, oh my gosh, run for your life, we're like, hey, sit here and pray. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Let's go to this direction. Oh, we don't need to be, no, you don't. Let's do the good and everything is going to be fine. Emotional stability refrains us from extravagance, addictions, including shopaholic behavior. Right? And then we're like I remember a husband calling me and saying, you need to talk to my wife. And I said, what happened? She spent what we couldn't spend. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It's worse than if she had committed another crime, because for him was enough crime in itself. And so emotional stability helps us. She says to us that when we are aware of our mission on earth, we should set ourselves a goal and strive to attain it. When we feel that we are also important on earth, many problems happen because people forget that they are important. Like the other day, if you think, like for example, if I come here and I put my cell phone here, okay? Keep it here. It's going to be very distracting. Imagine if everybody feels the same right. And I say, who cares, just my cell phone, right? For me, it's just like something that is not like very important. It's like an elephant in a room. We can't stop looking at it. Sometimes we're like this, we overlook our importance. And then we behave in ways thinking, nobody's looking, nobody cares what I do, what I say, what I feel. And Jesus comes and says, you're so important that you need to ponder what you're doing because it's affecting others too. And then, in that sense of responsibility, I am aware of my part, my task on earth. If I give myself the right that I give, I am also telling people, you can do what I do. When I lie, I'm telling people, I am vibrating, and I will be attracting lies. When I cheat, I am creating a vibration, and I will be attracting cheaters. When I betray, when I corrupt, I will be attracting the same. Discarnate spirits and incarnate spirits. It's as if I'm trashing myself out. So Joana de Angelis is asking us to see how precious we are. How can I engage in behaviors or in attitudes, thoughts, feelings, words and actions that are not noble? I'm telling the universe, I am not important. I can trash myself out and it doesn't matter. I am like this. I am crazy and hectic and whatever, and people start saying stuff. And at the end of the day, they don't realize that we are, when we say these things, we're telling God, and forgive me for the word, you're stupid. You don't know what you did when you created me. So, it's impossible to love ourselves without loving God. Because in our movement of self-love, we have an expression of our love for God. And then I make my work environment so sacred that I do not cross the line of a good attitude. Oh, but everybody's lying. In my, people say it like business people. Well, we have to say, we have to tell people that the products are better than they are, or we don't sell them. But when you make your work a sacred place, you don't do that. I believe in the product or I don't sell it. One day somebody came here in the center many years ago and asked, Vanessa, I work in a company that makes guns. I don't make them, but I work in that company. But I now feel I shouldn't be working there because I don't believe in it. I said, good for you. Should I leave? Well, you already said it. You don't believe in it. How are you? You're going to be conflicted. Your reasoning said it all. hopefully one day everybody quits. Nobody builds any. They do not make guns anymore. Everybody's walking out. And business is closed. And this weekend we have a gun show nearby our center, unfortunately, a national gun show. This weekend. It starts today, actually.
They have a lot of them.
Yeah. So we hope one day everybody feels so inadequate that they stop saying, no, I cannot participate in this. It's not sacred. So if you work in a place and you do anything that is against your principle, walk out. Or we will create diseases. Because morbid predispositions only happen as a consequence of grave mistakes. When our conscience doesn't approve of ourselves, we start feeling guilt. When we feel guilt, our doors are open to the spirits that don't like us. They start harassing us, and from there on, it's a disaster. We suffer, our family suffer, and one day, greater impediments will show up. So, Joana de Angelis is showing to us that emotional instability will come as we align ourselves in our divine mission on earth. So then we need to ask ourselves, what are our goals and ideals in life? Why do we aim to attain it? And how do we plan to achieve them? And we're talking about spiritual goals, because the material ones are just the means to achieve it. Through my work, through my family, through every action, I am exercising to achieve these spiritual goals. And they will not happen without discipline and sacrifice. But I need to pay my bills. Yes, you're selling your soul for so little. You're more precious than your mortgage. But I have children. You're more precious than the school they go to. Book action and reaction. Out of ambition, and sometimes we don't measure our ambition. A man killed his brothers. Generations later, the effects are still felt. So our decisions, fortunately or unfortunately, have repercussions beyond this life. Our decisions today at our work, in our communities, will be felt for generations to come. On the bright side of it, the decisions of my great-great-grandfather and his family is still felt today here in the United States when they opened the first Spiritist Center that has more than 100 years in Brazil. Their action, their decision to face the discrimination of being a Spiritist in a Catholic country at the time, being immigrants from Italy to Brazil, their courage is paying off today as much as our decision today is going to affect generations to come.
It's so scary.
Or it's wonderful. Because if we make the right choice, we're benefiting many generations to come. So it's fantastic to know that, as Joana says, we need to ponder our goals with the Christ teachings. Tonight we're being asked to become more emotionally stable by holding strongly onto the Christ consciousness. And we will be able to overcome the negative thinking, the negative feelings, because there is always hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today. That's why one day Bartholomew, like many of us facing the reality, was so concerned, came to Jesus and said, I love your teachings, but I don't get it. At home it's a mess. At my work it's bullying all the time. My mom is not here. She was the only one that understood me. And Jesus says, but Bartholomew, have you heard of good news that doesn't bring joy? The trademark of the follower of the good news is joy, courage, and hope. No negative thinking will ever take place in us, even about ourselves. The hope that tomorrow will be better than today. The courage to change. And the joy of always progressing. Think about this. Just to know that tomorrow will be better than today, it's worthwhile waking up every day. So with that, we're being asked to take good care of ourselves and never again underestimate our importance, equal importance before God. None of us are more important than others or less important. We are all important. Thus, the need of investing on this emotional care. Looking at ourselves in the mirror and accepting our divine nature. And allowing it to expand, making everything sacred in our lives. Everything. And what we've done years ago or millennia ago, we look back like Paul of Tarsus. I'm sorry, I didn't know any better, but now I know. At least this I know. I cannot go there anymore. Big deal. So let us ponder the proposal, rejoice, recompose ourselves, believe in the good, because God is at the center of our universe, friends. Okay? We're gonna finalize today with the collective passes. Okay? I'm going to put especially